I went through like kind of our DMs. I was like, how did we start connecting? And it was this one post that's now deleted that I think it was about prayer, because then I can see the replies, and we kind of started DMing about, because I was like, what do you mean by this specific statement that is no longer available, that was about prayer. And then you kind of linked me to the the about the Our Father that you have in your link tree. um and that kind of, I think, got us started chatting about what it is you believe, what it is that I believe, how those things maybe make sense or don't make sense. And I think that's maybe an interesting intro for you, if you could give me like a little bit of a summary of like, I'm Luke, and I have this relationship to spirituality, or to Christ, to
Yeah,
belief.
yeah. Well, I'm Luke, and I don't. I guess just hearing you say all of that, the thing that came to mind about prayer. Um, I remember several years ago. It must have been 2017, like the very, very, very beginning of 2017, maybe. I was reading Daniel Ingram's blog. He's a meditation teacher, and he was talking about. Um, I think he was talking about magic, and I kind of saw it also as applying to prayer. Basically, is like the conjunction of intention and attention,
Hmm.
and and so really, I mean, because it to a very, in a very basic functional way, I think that that's what a prayer is having the intention of, um, whether it's, seeking guidance or resolution or understanding or grace, or whatever that may be, is like having that intention in your heart and then applying your attention to like earnestly connecting that desire with this higher power, with God, with, however you want to call that. um, and so yeah, so for me, I was raised Catholic in the South, in Alabama, where I grew up. I was born and raised on the Gulf Coast, and around my teenage years, I kind of like went agnostic. I left the church, um, and then in my late 20s, early 30s, I had like a mental health crisis, but it was also, um, I knew that I knew that I was at a key moment in my life that I might not survive, and I turned towards a kind of prayer that I had learned about. It's called the Jesus prayer, that comes out of the Orthodox tradition. I had learned about it through J.D. Salinger's fiction writing, um, and and then, after that period of my life, then I really, I got into yoga and meditation and stuff, because really I burnt out a lot of, I burnt out my nervous system in a really big way, and so I just had to kind of, um, rebuild, I guess. And in that rebuilding, I was, exploring, physical exercise, mental practice of meditation, and reading more of the kind of understanding the writings of the saints that had led to the books that led me to start working with this prayer. Um, and yeah, and then, I've done a lot of things in my life since then, but I would say that, I've had I've had personal I've had enough personal experience with what I feel like is the spirit or the energy of Jesus, that to me, whether I go to a church or not, I feel like there is a way in which one can aspire to follow Christ, to follow his teachings, that doesn't have to look like being a Christian
Mm.
necessarily, but that there's a lot in the Christian tradition that really is worth savoring and enjoying and learning from, and that for me, I've spent quite a bit of time over the past 10 years or more learning more about the Christianity and also about Buddhism and stuff. And I really kind of see the two of them interwoven so deeply that yeah, for me there's not a lot of daylight between the two. So I don't know if that's too rambly, but I'll stop now and let you speak a
We're
little
here to
bit.
ramble. I mean, if anywhere is the
Yeah.
place, this is it. It's I think what you said about kind of taking the things that work out of Christianity, or maybe you didn't phrase it in that way, but that resonates with me a lot. Um, Having this conversation, though, I always kind of think about the conversations I have with Christians who are then like, okay, but
Hmm.
who is Jesus to you? You know, do you believe in Jesus? Do you and I think I know where your answer is going to go, but considering that you grew up Catholic, that you kind of
Hmm.
something about that maybe didn't resonate with you, or maybe the particular way in which you were taught about Catholicism, maybe there was a disconnect, but you ended up kind of distancing yourself from that, is what I heard.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
now, obviously, years later, you have a new relationship with this thing that obviously maybe in some ways resembles what you grew up with, but obviously it's also very different in important ways. Um, can you maybe explain what, I don't want to say turned you off, but what led you away from the faith of your childhood, let's
Yeah.
call it, and but then what brought you back? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so it's it maybe it's absurd. I expected the priest and the bishop to have more. I expected them to have a kind of supernatural knowledge
Mm.
that they didn't exhibit, and when they didn't exhibit that supernatural knowledge, I just kind of took it as that the church, like the institution of the church, was kind of fraudulent to
Yeah.
me. Um, so what happened was, it was my confirmation. Actually, it was my I prior to my confirmation, there's a class, and I was in it with a bunch of my peers, and also like an adult woman who was going through her catechism and stuff, and and at the end of the class they gave us a test, and I don't know why, but I looked over at this other person's test. I don't even remember if I copied the answer or not, but I felt like I had cheated. And during the confirmation, as like the priest and the bishop are walking down the aisle and doing all of their ritual stuff, I I had expected and kind of wanted someone to like call me out, to say like, we know what you did. And that didn't happen. And when that didn't happen, I was like, I don't think these guys have got the juice, you know? So I think this is full of shit, man. And basically I just kind of like grabbed onto that, and I was like, I'm done with the church. I don't think these guys have really got the juice that cuz like when you read the book of Acts, right? There's that whole scene where there's a couple of people that are going to come into the fold, and they're like, "Okay, well, did you give up all your money?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, we totally gave up all of our money." But they didn't. They were lying. And then just like the spirit left their body and they fell dead to the ground. I'm like, to me, at some level, like there's there are these magical stories, and it's like, all right, well, like, where's the magic? And I mean, we're a long time from apostolic times, and institutions are just the carriers of tradition, and so it was absurd. But at the same time, was my way into um, a rebellious, that was my doorway into rebellion. That was my way of breaking from my childhood and entering into like the adolescence, leading towards like self-exploration and exploration of the world. um and so yeah, so that's kind of what happened. um Beyond that, as far as the reconnecting to my faith, um hmm I guess it was, some people have great awakenings or great realizations at a breaking point.
Mm.
And I was at a breaking point in 2010. I might have had like a brain tumor or something. I don't know. I was drinking a lot, and I figured I was either gonna like have an aneurysm, a brain tumor,
Mm.
or a fatal car accident. Like something. My time on the earth was short, and it was an emergency, and so back when I was like 17, 18 years old, I had read Franny and Zoe, and Salinger talks about this prayer, and how it will, how it can very, like, it's not to be taken lightly. It can seriously like disturb your life. It can cause you to have like a breakdown, because that's what happens. One
Mm.
of the characters in the story, she winds up, like suffering a bit of a breakdown because she's practicing this prayer that she learned from this book, The Way of the Pilgrim. And the pilgrim had learned this prayer as he was seeking to understand what does it mean to pray ceaselessly, which is a verse from Thessalonians, after his wife and his child had died in a fire. And so he's wandering the countryside of Russia, like trying to find someone to teach him how to pray ceaselessly. And he's taught this prayer. And so I knew that, like this prayer is powerful, and 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 there may come a time where, like it's, like the, I don't know, maybe you have these in Germany, I don't know, but in case of emergency, break
Mm.
glass, and behind the glass is like a fire extinguisher or an axe or whatever,
Yeah.
something that you're going to need in case of the emergency. And for me, that was that was the time where I'm like, okay, this is the emergency. I'm going to start praying this prayer. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, the sinner. And I just prayed it, and I prayed it, and a lot of stuff happened. It was a high intensity moment in my life, and I wasn't coming from, and I wasn't, like I said, I was drinking a lot, and so I wasn't sober while I was going through it, and so I was really just like a rocket, just like fusing out of both ends, and by the end of it, I was just kind of really depleted. Um, but yeah, and again, in the wake of that, it really made me kind of try to understand what had happened, and try to understand how to just move forward with life, and that's when I got more into meditation and different things. Yeah.
And this prayer that we keep referring to, it's the prayer from the Gospels, right? It's um
Um, no, so the prayer from the Gospels is the Lord's Prayer, right?
okay.
The Jesus prayer, I don't know. It's just Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, the sinner. I don't, right off the top of my head right now, I don't know exactly who first came up with that prayer,
Okay.
or like what exactly its provenance is. But no, so then going like back to the very beginning of our conversation where you mentioned that I had pointed to this essay by Simone Weil about the Lord's Prayer. In the wake of my in the wake of my recovery, after a couple of years, I had decided that I wanted to go just like work on a farm and just get dirt under my nails and touch the earth and be involved in just like how things grow. And so while I was doing that, a couple of years later, I was listening to a podcast, In Our Time by BBC's Radio 4, and they did an episode about Simone Weil. And so when I heard about her and her life, I was really touched by that, by hearing about her. And so then I went and I got one of her books, and in reading it is how I came across the essay on the Lord's Prayer. And it's a wonderful essay that really kind of breaks down her understanding of what each line, almost each word in that prayer means. And to me, it's a profound exposition of how, like when you really understand what's happening in that prayer, it is a complete prayer, which to me, really signifies why Jesus says, like, if you must pray anything, just pray this prayer, because it's kind of, like it's a one size fits all functional tool to kind of, just like, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. And that's the thy will be done part, to me, is one of the parts that really in my life had the strongest effect of kind of leaning towards trust.
It's about surrender,
that
maybe.
Instead of what's that?
Is it about surrender or?
Yeah, exactly. Like instead of me asking for what I want or seeking the outcomes that I desire, it's surrendering to divine will. It's saying, like, I don't know what's coming. I don't know how to get where I'm supposed to go. I don't even know where I'm supposed to go. So just like thy will be done. Let me trust that. Yeah, let me trust in the guidance. And then towards the end, the part around forgiveness, forgiving others and allowing yourself to be forgiven is really, really, really key to just trying to, again, surrendering and releasing and relaxing and just kind of being able to trust. Yeah.
Let me read you a little poem I found. Prayer is for desire. Sincere prayer is not concerned with the self or things of the world. A more perfect prayer is to the Lord, so that we may learn love and truth. In this and in every way, God seeks our enrichment. That's something you wrote, right? About prayer. Does that do you deny you wrote this?
No, well, I don't. I do and I don't. I did write this poem. Whether it's a poem or a prayer, or whether there's a difference between the two. But at the same time, so this was after the crisis, but before the farm. Okay. And I was living on a sailboat, and I was meditating and praying a lot. And this and one other poem, it was literally a matter of, like, as I was waking up, I just reached up to the settee next to me and grabbed a notepad and a pen and just wrote it out. Like, yes, my hand wrote those words, but I didn't spend any time thinking that up. Like, really? The mind of Luke did not create those words. the hand of Luke wrote them, and they came through me. That's the truth of where that came from. So if anything, I feel like that was a channeled writing.
Mm.
But yeah, it is something that I wrote. Yeah.
How is meditation different for you than prayer? Because you've mentioned both, and I think for different people they mean different things. Are
Mm-hmm.
those the same thing for you? Are they? Do you? Because you say prayer is a lot about like intention and attention, and it's about kind of
Mm-hmm.
surrender maybe to a higher power, which we can also get back to. Um, but then, is it something you actively practice? Is meditation something you actively practice? Do you distinguish between the two? And
Well,
yeah,
yeah. I mean, there's lots of distinctions. I have so meditation. I guess if you're asking what, because I've mentioned meditation, and so there's meditation writ large, and then there's meditation specific. And so and the reason why, yeah, I'll just explain my whole kind of categorization and
yeah,
understanding of all of this stuff. So meditation writ large is, so you take the word meditation in like especially the Buddhist context, and it's pointing to this word bhavana. And the word bhavana in the context of its time means cultivation,
hmm.
right? So and so when you study Buddhism, right, Buddhism has the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Noble Path. And so what is it? Life is hard. Like, the challenge of life can create suffering. There is a way to go beyond the suffering. The way to go beyond the suffering is to live a high quality life. The high quality life is the Noble Eightfold Path, recognizing that my actions have consequences. Therefore, I must take good actions that do not harm others. I must not lie to others. I must find a right livelihood. I must calm and concentrate my mind. Blah 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 blah. And so meditation writ large is the cultivation of conduct that leads to concentration, that leads to clarity, that leads to compassion. And so so the distinction, I guess, for me is that prayer can be like the Lord's Prayer, which is a combination of surrender and acknowledging grace and actively participating in forgiveness in order to, I guess, kind of try to cleanse the mind and to create that connection of that relationship between yourself and God. At the same time, the type of meditation practice that is referred to as metta practice, the practice of loving kindness, right? Because so with that, you take the attention, the quieted mind from the meditative practice, and the intention of, may I be free from enemies and free from dangers, may I be free from mental anxieties, may I pass my time with a healthy body and happy mind, may all of the beings around me also have this, may all of the friends and family, may all of the beings in the world and the universe and just out into the cosmic unknown, have this freedom and have this quality of life. To me, metta meditation is also a kind of prayer. And so there is meditation in the sense of just focusing on the breath in order to develop concentration and calm. There is the awareness of the body as a way of clarifying the mind, and there is this way of intentionally generating this compassion, generating this well-being that that I think that the calming practice, the clarifying practice, all of that, that increases the power of attention, so that the intention melded with the attention has, potentially, even stronger effect. And so I feel like meditation in and of itself as a practice really is, if you want to think of it in functional terms, like it's to the purpose of increasing the quality of attention so that the prayer may be more effective, I guess. Yeah.
Okay, but the two kind of go hand in hand for you, at least in your. Do you practice both of them, like on a random Wednesday? Could I find you like praying, meditating, or are those more like kind of concepts that
I mean,
exist?
if you were to, if you just start throwing random numbers out there, at some point you'll catch me meditating or praying. My prayers kind of, I don't, especially like my relationship with the Lord's Prayer, at least at this point in my life, is really completely random. My practice of sitting meditation is also at this point pretty random. I've kind of got my head at this level in the camera frame, just to kind of hide the fact that like I didn't even bother to like get really cleaned up.
Luke's
Well, no,
luscious
I
locks.
say that because, kind of like when we were like, oh, how are you doing? It's like, well, some days are better than others.
Yeah.
I've been a mess, and so maybe I wouldn't be as much of a mess if my practice was more on point, but at this point, just like some days I might sit for 10 or 20 minutes, and a lot of days I don't even sit at all. And but then, last year I went off and I did a 3-month retreat. And I think part of why I'm a mess right now is because I did do a 3-month retreat last year. Kind of like my whole thing with my nervous breakdown. Like I feel like I go through these swings where sometimes I'm really deep into my practice and sometimes I'm recovering from the fact that I did it. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I have without a doubt, since I would say, the beginning of 2011, I have given a lot more of the time in my life to different kinds of practice and different kinds of prayer, and I there are no counterfactuals. Like I have no idea. I have no idea if my life would be better or worse if I had never done these things or if I had done them more. But
But what was the retreat
yeah,
like?
I don't know. I don't know if I answered your question, but
No, that's
I
okay.
don't know what to say next.
Me neither. You mentioned the retreat though. 3 months. It was a silent
Yeah.
retreat, right? Or
Yeah, well, yeah, it was a silent retreat in that the only person I was supposed to speak with was the teacher, and then as a group we did do various chants most days, but aside from chants and aside from teacher meetings, there was no communication,
Wow.
between me and anybody else. Yeah.
what was that like? I mean, 3 months. 3 months is a long time. What do you do for 3 months when you don't talk?
Well,
Because you don't just sit and meditate,
there's
right?
you don't just sit and meditate, but you do mostly sit and
Okay.
meditate. I don't remember the exact numbers now. I think it was somewhere between like 8 and 10 hours of sitting practice every day, and then like 4 hours of walking practice every day, And and then there were meals, and there's sleeping, and there's times for chanting, and a little bit of break time during the day. But really, yeah, I mean, what do? You sit, you walk, you go for walks outside, you do the chores you have to do, you eat your meals, you meet with the teacher. For me, I spent an inordinate amount of time thinking about what I was going to do with my life once the retreat was over, because I didn't I didn't have a home to go back to, so I wound up like on the road and traveling and getting married to a person I barely knew, and just doing a lot, which is also part of probably why I'm you know in like a frazzled recovery phase. So yeah, so like, of course the mind thinks about the unresolved things. The mind thinks about, what am I going to talk to the teacher about today? The mind thinks about the stuff that has happened in the past. But beyond that, there are times where the mind is a little bit quieter, and you're just more in touch with just feeling the body. And I didn't have I never I during the course of my 3 months, I never went into a jhana state, or I never went into any deep states. I didn't have any awakenings. I didn't have I didn't even I think one time in like the first week or so, I had one experience sitting with what I would call like high mindfulness, but for most of the 3 months my mindfulness was really pretty mundane. I had and another thing too that we did during the retreat was we also did breath work in the mornings. After the first few weeks, we started doing group breath work most mornings for the rest of the retreat. And that was really cathartic for me, like during, but even more so in like the immediate aftermath, because like we would do breath work and then we would transition from breath work into chanting. And then for me, like during the chanting, there would be times of just like significant emotional release, sometimes even to the point of like I had to like go to the bathroom, and then I just like found myself like screaming with no story as to what I was screaming about, just like like so yeah. I mean, for me, I feel like it was, and and a lot of like the tension and the interplay of like the teacher and the control of the teacher, and kind of the dialogue that was happening between us. I feel like there was a lot of self-reflective emotional evaluation kind of stuff that was going on for me, that was probably more important for me to kind of see and try to address, even than like getting into like deeper like meditative states, just because I have in the past done some meditation retreats where I got into deeper states, and then afterwards the emotional blowback of my issues and other people just like there are people now who don't necessarily have the kindest things to say about me, or just that I'm like not a safe person to be around because I'm emotionally volatile or whatever. because yeah, I mean, just like with my thing back in 2010, like when you're working with deep practice, deep stuff comes out.
Yeah.
And for me personally, my lots of people have challenging childhoods. I had a challenging childhood. I've got lots of I got lots of my own issues, and so some of that stuff comes out and tries to seek resolution. Whether it finds the resolution or not, it tries to work its way through you, especially when you dig those deep trenches. And that's I refer to it that way as far as digging deep trenches again, because going back to like what is meditation? It's cultivating, like to work the earth, to dig through and I want to do my little spiel too of talking about meditation, talking about cultivation, and then also talking about my relationship with Christianity or the Gospels, really, in the Gospel according to Mark, the one parable where Jesus is really teaching a lesson in the Gospel of Mark is the parable of the sower. And he's teaching about cultivation. He's teaching, if you just live your life at the surface level on the road, any seeds that drop are just going to get taken away. They're just going to get, eaten by the crows or whatever. And then beyond that, there's like the big rocky boulders on the side of the road where, maybe something will grow, but it won't grow to its fullness because it doesn't get the chance to really take root. And then out past the rocks on the side of the road, then there's the brambles, and stuff may grow in the brambles, but you're gonna get ripped to shreds, kids, out there in the brambles. You gotta go past that. You gotta get to the clear soil. And so for me, I think of each of us as having the potential to tend a garden where we stop making our life just an active pathway and pull out the rocks and eventually start to pull out the weeds and then really let the good things grow. So and I think that like a 3-month retreat is a great way to work on that, but also just the fact is that like I am such a person that my 3-month retreat was, instead of getting to watch the amazing plant, like bloom and grow, I was out there like lifting rocks and pulling weeds.
The work is the work.
Yeah. The work is the work. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. There's a magic square. Are you familiar with the movie TENET?
I am familiar with the movie TENET. Yeah.
So, are you familiar with the magic square that inspired the movie TENET?
I'm not. Wait. No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
Okay. So, if you take out a piece of paper or whatever, or just imagine this, okay? So it's 5 letters, SATOR, Sator, right?
Okay.
And then from the first S, you write the same word down, SATOR, Sator, right? So the second letter, so now we're into row 2. First letter is A, right? AREPO, Arepo, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So the third word is tenet, TENET.
Okay.
And so now for the first column, you've got SATOR, and you've got the A, and you've got the R, and you've got the E, and now you put the P, and now you've got the O, and so now you've got arepo. So sator, arepo, tenet, tenet. And then it flips on itself, and now the last two words are opera and rotas. Sator, arepo, tenet, opera, rotas. And whether you read it forwards or backwards, it's all just those 5 words. So you've got tenet as the cross, and then you've got sator, and the translation is roughly, he turns the furrows and we hold the plow. And
Wow. Okay. What
yeah,
language
yeah,
is that?
yeah. And if you watch Tenet, like, they use all of those words. They intentionally
Really?
use the word sator multiple times in opera and rotas and arepo,
Are those
because
English
it's
words or
all, huh?
are those what language is that? Is that?
No, it's Latin. It's
Oh,
Latin.
I see. Okay, okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so and the whole thing with Pompeii and the volcano that they refer to in there, that was the first place where one of these magic squares was ever found. And then in, like, caves in France, in different places, like, there were these, like, secret Christians who, like, this was like a marking on the wall outside of places where they would meet and stuff. And there's
Wow.
also this element of this question of the mysticism of, like, were they using this magic square as a way to fold time in order to, like, who knows?
Now we're
Who
getting
knows?
now we're
It's a
getting
mystery.
somewhere.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, that's because the moment that I saw Tenet, I'm like, this is the magic square. Yeah, it's deep, man. But anyway, I bring all of that up again because it also has this imagery of digging
Hmm.
of digging a furrow, and of how, like, God's action is constant. God keeps the wheel spinning, and it's a question for us of whether or not we're going to hold tight to the plow and use that spinning action as an opportunity to dig to hoe our row, you know.
Okay. When it comes to God, when it comes to Christ, etc.,
Mhm.
where would you place yourself in, like, if someone on the road were to ask you, because if they heard you speak and they heard a snippet and they heard you mention Christ, or they heard you mention the Buddha, they might assume different things about, okay, Luke is a Christian, but then some things you say, it's like, oh, maybe, okay, is he a Buddhist? Um, if you had to summarize kind of what you believe in terms of, like, who is Jesus, who is the Buddha, are they expressions of godliness, are they incarnations of some kind of divine source? Is God, because you also mentioned God keeps the wheel turning, is he the wheel? Does he keep the wheel turning? um are we part of that wheel? I mean, that's kind of a big question. It's kind of, but because we've
Yeah.
mentioned all these things, and initially, like, the first 20 followers or something I have on this podcast, a lot of them are kind of fundamentalist believers because I know them personally, and
Hmm.
to them it's like Jesus is this very specific, you know person. Let's say he's God incarnate. They literally believe that he rose from the dead, etc., etc. How does that all, like, kind of play with you?
Yeah. So, all right. Big picture, right? Like, first question, I guess, what is God? Um, and to try to approach this question, first I look to the Lord's Prayer, right?
Mm.
Because in the Lord's Prayer, it says, "Hallowed be thy name," right? And that hallowedness is really, like, to me anyway, it's an acknowledgement of, like, I don't know God's name. Like,
Mm.
whatever God's name is, it's so holy, it's so sacred, like to speak it would be to defile it. And so this acknowledgement that the name of God is so hallowed, is so sacred, is is to say that, like, calling God God isn't the name of God. Like, the term God is a placeholder for,
We're just pointing to the moon.
For what is ultimately ineffable, right?
Mm.
Like, you in the Christian tradition, you've got the adiphatic and the cataphatic traditions of, like, well, we can only describe God by what God's characteristics are, or we can only describe God by what God isn't. Like, really, what is God? What is God? Who is God? In the Gospels, Jesus gives us an answer, and he says that God is spirit. Okay, great. What is spirit? I don't know. The best thing that we know as humans in our bodies is expiration and inspiration. The breath, the breathing in and out. Our spirit is our breath, is this motion of bringing it in and letting it out. And this action of breathing in and breathing out is a kind of motion, is a kind of wheel turning. And so if God is spirit, and if God is the turning of the wheel, like, that this fundamental motive force that we observe in the world, whether it's electrons spinning around nuclei, whether it's planets orbiting stars and stars orbiting black holes, whatever, right? Like, all of this motive occurrence, like, this is
Being.
this is like the physical manifestation of God in our universe, such as we can apprehend. Beyond that, I think that God is very personal. God only reveals himself, herself, itself, whatever, to an individual, maybe at the time of death, maybe at a moment of spontaneous illumination, and really, it's like the metaphor of the elephant. Like, you, Sam, may have your own individual experience of God, and of how you would describe that experience. But if I have my own experience, my experience may be very different. But, your description might be like a blind man holding an elephant's ear, trying to give a description of the elephant, whereas I'm holding on to the elephant's leg, trying to give a description. And so I think that, there's that. As far as Jesus goes, as far as the Buddha goes, I do believe that these were two human beings who lived lives on Earth, and I think that, my mind has been tainted by having read, many years back. I read through the I want to remember his name. What's that wacky German guy? He was a teacher of Goethe. He was
No.
Steiner. Yeah. So Steiner gave these lectures on the different on each of the four Gospels, and in Steiner's lectures on the Gospels, he basically his like hyper metaphysical mystical view of things is that Jesus and the Buddha were actually like reincarnations of each other, kind of like, so like because the Buddha lived like 500 years before Christ did. And so anyway, so the Buddha basically, like, he came in order to open the doors for the floodgates of compassion so that then Jesus could come and harness that energy and redirect it to spread throughout the world through his life. Because like, East Asia wasn't as tied in with Rome as Palestine was, and the only way to break the empire is to, like, plant that seed at the right time in the right place. And so anyway, aside from that, I think that they were real people that had a real impact in the world, and the ultimately, right, like, the Buddha, aside from teaching the path to enlightenment, he teaches a lot about loving kindness. He teaches a lot about compassion. He really, like, he teaches that, like, the best weapon you can have is a heart of loving kindness, because you can be like, literally, like, there are stories of, like, Buddhist nuns who were, like, had, like, scalding hot water thrown on them, and they were so consumed in, like, just with a total mind of loving kindness that by the time the water came to hit them, it had already turned cool. Like, there is a magic power in this love. And Jesus, right before he goes to his crucifixion, what does he teach? He says, I leave you with one commandment. I leave you with this one commandment, and this one commandment is to love. Because God is love. God's love is in me, and I want my love and God's love to be in you. That's it. And going back to the Buddha again, the Buddha, when people are talking about, like, judging someone's moral qualities, he ultimately comes to the point and he says, look, if you're really and truly on board with my program, with what's really going on here, if you were to be taken and seized on the road by bandits, and those bandits were to cut you apart piece by piece, if for a moment your heart was to turn to darkness and anger, you're not there yet. You're not there yet. And jumping back forward to Jesus literally got crucified. He had, like, as he's having, like, thorns hammered into his skull, he's, like, crying out, like, forgive my oppressors. Like, give them grace, because they don't understand. Like, they just don't see it. They don't have the clarity, like, but he didn't turn to anger. He didn't turn to harshness. And so the bouncing back and forth between Jesus and Buddha, I see one of these people as a really, really, really well-documented teacher, and the other as a really, really, really well-documented example. And I mean, yeah, sure, you can question the documentation on Jesus's life, but aside from that, to get to the mystical of it, I may or may not have had a couple of near-death experiences during that crisis in 2010 when I was drinking intensely and praying the Jesus prayer. But a couple of years later, right before I wound up on the farm in Tennessee, I had a night where I woke up in the middle of the night and I was just reading through the Psalms, and then I went back to bed, and I woke up. And I woke up that morning with just this feeling of electrical current all over my body. And kind of like with the poem, with the prayer that you shared earlier, these words just came out of my mouth. I said the words, I saw him. I saw him, and he's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
Wow.
And the fact is, I don't know what I saw. I have no image in my mind. I can't draw it, not only because I can't draw, but because I can't recall it. I don't know if we talked. I don't know what happened. I don't know. I just know that I woke up. I felt this feeling, and these words just spoke that I just spoke them. But I know, I know, air quotes, no, I believe, I believe that there is something there that I experienced, but that
And him
experience is
referring
so
to,
precious that I just can't recall it, you know? Like there, and the reason why I bring this up too is because near death experiences, having potentially had some, and right around that same time as when I had that dream, that vision, that experience, I met someone who had had a near death, and she kind of turned me on to near death experiences. And since then, in the 13 years since, I have read and listened to way too many people's stories of their own near death experiences, and the many, many, many people who may not have even believed in the life and times of Christ during their life, but then in this in this personal experience that they had beyond the reality as we understand it here on earth, here in our local phenomenal range, they met him. And he may not have even introduced himself by name, and in fact often he doesn't, but they just knew, they knew who he was. And so I believe that, and in the meeting of him, they'll see the wounds that he suffered, and they'll be taken back to that time of the crucifixion. Like they'll see what happened, and he'll tell them, like, no, don't get mad at the people that are throwing rocks at me. Don't get mad at the people, because you're just feeding the anger. Like, you've got to turn it around. You've got to forgive. You've got to embody love. You've got to let go of the harshness. You've got to let go of the judgment. Everybody, jumping back to Buddhism, everybody has their causes and conditions. Like, just because someone can do better doesn't give you the right to judge them. Like, you've got to give everybody space to do their own growing. And as far as the resurrection, man, I don't know. I wasn't there. I haven't been there. I do know that, like in a lot of the stories of, like, the very end of the gospel and even into the Acts, there are a lot of times where, like, there were the two guys, like, walking down the road, and they're walking with the guy, and after they've been walking with the guy for several hours, they realize, like, wait a second, that's Jesus. That was Jesus the whole, like, I think that there are ways in which, this manifestation can kind of be hidden, and so, to the extent that I believe that, like, every atom of my body is functionally, like, a manifestation of this motive force of God's just fundamental action of motion. And yeah, man, I don't know, like, that's it, right? Like, it is that way in which we are all, like, God apprehending God, through the veils of confusion and misunderstanding, and just trying to grow more and more towards inhabiting the spirit of a person who, who really gets it, who really is able to fully, or even just more fully, manifest the divine. Yeah.
yeah, I started reading William James's the
You say that
variety.
again?
I started reading. Can you? Is it a connection thing again?
So you've been reading William James, is that what you said?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, his book, which used to be, I think, a lecture series that he gave in, like, I think 18 something. Um, but obviously, a large part of the religious experiences bit is the experiences bit, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just it's like the most interesting thing ever. I feel like, you know, and like near death experiences, and then also all kinds of religious experiences of all kinds. The problem I have is I can only talk about them in
Mm-hmm.
theory because I haven't ever had anything
Mm-hmm.
resembling anything. Despite, you know, me being a believer for, you know, let's say 20 years. 20 years is until I was 20, let's put it that way. I didn't start
Yeah.
out being a believer when I was 0, but you know, you get it. Um,
Yeah.
and obviously, a lot of these experiences also maybe occur, like you said, during stress points. I mean, there's a reason they're called near death experiences, right?
Yeah.
I and one time you also sent me an article that I read about, I think, one of those experiences, and in responding to that, I remember saying like, look, I don't have any way or any reason to be like, hey, this is probably untrue because it's an experience that someone's talking about. This, I don't know this person.
Right.
Um, yeah, but it's just this weird thing that exists out there that is like, how are you going to disagree with an experience that someone has? Or I don't even want to disagree with it. But it's
Mm-hmm.
also like I have this innate skepticism in me, for, you know, various reasons. But then there's someone like you have no reason to to lie to me. You have no reason to deceive me, and you may or may not have had experiences, as you say.
Yeah.
Um, why do you think some people have them, other people don't have them? Some people, you know, near death experiences I think also mean different things for different people. For some people it means literally they medically or died, their heart, their brain activity stopped, and they came back, and then they
Right.
reported something. um yeah, it's just hard for me to even make sense of that in my worldview. Not that I even have a cohesive worldview, but um do you think there's a kind of intentionality behind it? Is there kind of a higher power that maybe decides, okay, these people, it makes sense for them to have this experience right now. This person isn't ready for it yet. Or
Right.
is it more random? Do you even have a thought on that?
Um. Well, so I think that, yeah, I mean there are some people who, um, okay, and yeah, so near death, right? Like there is just like, oh shit, I almost died, and in that brief window, I had an insight into just the fact that I need to be, like a better father, or kinder to
Sure.
my peers and my associates or whatever, and then beyond that, there is like, oh, I medically died, and maybe I just like popped out of my body for a moment, and I was like observing the operating theater,
Hmm.
and then I went right back into my body. And then there is like, oh, I popped out of my body and I went into the void, and I'm just in this blackness, but it's not scary, and then I went back to my body. Or, oh, I went to hell after I overdosed on heroin, and then I started calling out for Jesus, and this pinprick of light came, and I warped through this tunnel, and I wound up in a heavenly
Hmm.
realm. Or I met my grandparents, and my grandparents took me to this meadow, and we just talked in the meadow for a little while, and then I went back to my body. Or I went to the meadow, and Jesus was sitting there on a bench, and me and Jesus sat on the bench together, and then he showed me like thousands of years of like introspective living, and then I came back to my body. Like there are a lot of different ways that these stories occur.
Hmm.
That is a real quick like tear off of like eight of the most common kinds of ways that, and I don't even know if that was eight ways, but whatever, just like that's just like, here are a bunch of, like, ways that this can go down.
Hmm.
And yeah, I guess some people have a reason to need to connect with this teacher or brother or yeah, I mean, I think of Jesus as like as everybody's big brother. Whether
But not in
whether
a
you've
big
met him
brother
or not,
sense.
whether you
Like,
love him or not, huh?
not in the
Well, I mean, we are talking about someone who knows every intimate detail of everything you've ever done or thought, and who wants you to surrender to his will.
allegedly.
So, it's the question. It's a question of whether you have like a benevolent or a malevolent Rocco's basilisk, right? But no, um, and and I guess, and for me, like I do believe that it's possible that I may have had a couple of near death experiences because I left behind some like writings on a wall that connect to that meadow that a lot of people go to, and
Interesting.
and I have read occasions of some people who had an experience of dying but had nothing, they came back with no memory, but then 30 years later all of a sudden just like boom, just like all of the memories of what happened in that other realm just like came into them. And my
Wow.
understanding of why that may be is that and this is the answer that I give for myself anyway, because I connect with it, is just like, if I could remember what it was like I already have a hard enough time being a human on Earth. If I could remember just how delightful that was, it would make it that much harder for me to be here now.
Yeah.
And like going to like I saw him, he was the most beautiful thing I ever saw. I also think that there is, like going jumping into the Gospels real quick with the whole thing with Thomas and the wounds. I'm pointing to my hands and pointing to my wrists because depending on who you ask. Anyway,
Yeah.
Jesus says, like, okay, great, you believe because I showed you, but like, how much greater for those who believe without needing to demand for proof. And so to me, there is this extent to which it's like, oh wow, how cool, I get to skate the line between like having had a direct personal experience and also not having any proof. Like, not that it, and even if I could remember having seen him, even if I could remember like being in the meadow or whatever, like telling you that story wouldn't prove it to you. You would just be like, oh, Luke has a story that Luke believes in. I have something that points toward, but I don't even have like what I can call the direct experience myself, because there is like, I don't know, I think that there is some kind of power in having the faith, because like, and this is a circular logic thing, and some people don't like circular logic, but whatever. There is the seeing is believing, like there is the like, I didn't believe anything, I had the near death experience, I saw it, now I believe it, and now it enforces how I live my life. So like that seeing becomes that believing that does, but you can also spin the wheel the other way, and the believing can reinforce the seeing, the like the living a life that tries to be more pious, that tries to be more contemplative, that tries to be more loving, leads to these everyday miracles. The kind of thing where it's just like, oh, I just like bumped into a guy who needed $5 and I had $5 to spare. Like, yeah, it doesn't seem like, oh wow, like I healed the leper. No, but it is. But it is a miracle. Like there are so many things about like, oh, I got stuck in traffic, and and if I hadn't gotten stuck in traffic, I might have gotten hit by a car. What, like, miracles
But
are
there are no
happening
counterfactuals, remember?
That's true. That's true. There are these non-counterfactual miracles that are constantly happening, and so there's something about like living life faithfully that, like, maybe there's a reward. Maybe even, like getting attached to the idea of the reward detracts from the quality of life. Like it is about this kind of surrender that says, hey, I don't know what's going to happen when I die. I don't know what's going to happen when I'm 5 years from now. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't know what's going to happen, when I go walk down the road to go to the bistro or whatever, just like, I'm just going to live here and now. That's the other, do you have the other one? Do you have the other poem, the other prayer that I wrote?
I do. I have all the poems right here. Which one are you thinking of?
Lord, help me, or the one with looking in the mirror and looking out the window. Yeah.
Look in the mirror, you are beautiful. Look out the window, the world is beautiful. Lord, help us die to the past, which we cannot change. Lord, help us die to the future, which we cannot control. Lord, help us live now, in the moment, with you, and bless us and remind us to bless each other.
Yeah. And that's it, really, I think. And that one I didn't. I wrote it. My hand wrote it, but I didn't spend any. It wasn't Luke who wrote that.
Did all your poems? Do you have plausible deniability for all of them?
No, just those two.
Okay.
Just those two.
Okay, they're the first two as well, so that's fitting.
Yeah. Because they're the best ones. Because I didn't write them.
The way you're talking about it reminds me of like the divine inspiration the Bible is supposed to be written in, right? I mean, don't you think they also had like a similar? If it's true, then because the Holy Spirit was like inspiring them, right, or whatever. That's kind of the narrative. Do you think it could have happened in a similar way, or how do you? I don't want to completely change topics.
I think they were probably like bits and pieces, snatches of the Bible that were kind of written in that way, that were divinely inspired. But a lot of it is also like a historiography, is like a history. My understanding of the Gospel according to Luke is that like he did a bunch of research. He went and asked a bunch of people a bunch of questions, and then he compiled this narrative based off of the accounts that he got of different people's experiences. Like, I don't think that all of it was like a transcription of like, just like beautiful poetry, or whatever. But some of it was, I'm sure, like some of this stuff. Probably even like a lot of the Psalms and Songs of Solomon, things like that. I don't know. I'm not a biblical scholar.
Neither am I. I mean, but they're also all saying different things.
Well, so going back to the near-death experiences, there is this one account that I read a long time back where somebody was talking to Jesus on the other side or whatever, and they were asking him about the Bible. And the response, as I recall it, what he said that not everything in the Bible is literally truth, but the Bible is about the truth. So
I like that.
So that's my understanding of the relationship to the Bible and truth, is that like not everything in the Bible is 100% accurate, but the Bible itself is about the capital T, the truth. Yeah.
I can live with that. With that. Yeah. I was talking, my first episode was with my friend Steve Campbell, who he grew up in kind of the same meeting that I grew up in. And I say meeting, like, they're kind of like a fundamentalist church that it doesn't really matter the details, but
yeah,
they take things very literally, which makes things obviously very difficult to reconcile if you then have some other thoughts to hold as well. But yeah, like what you're saying, it makes it a lot easier to swallow the Bible as a whole, as one pill. When you talk about near-death experiences or experiences, though, you keep bringing up Jesus with them. Are you What do you think about all those experiences that maybe don't fit into the Christian framework, or that maybe have, I haven't read a ton of Muslim experiences, but I'm sure they have to be out there, or
Yeah,
of other faiths. Do
yeah,
they, because I'm obviously pointing to the thing where it's like, maybe like the worldview that we already have, even if we maybe don't believe in it, but maybe a
mhm,
secular person in a Christian or Western country that is obviously very influenced by Christianity, obviously maybe their experiences will be sourcing from real world experiences that they have had, et cetera, et cetera. You kind of know where I'm going with this. Um, but if these experiences do point to maybe capital T truth, or maybe point to an understanding of the world of reality that is kind of, that has to be connected, right, to some truth, or it's close to it, it's approximation to it.
mhm.
um yeah, do you think about those experiences that don't maybe mention Christ at all, that have like a totally different narrative to them?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's lots of them. It's definitely not the case that that near death experiences demand you to believe in Christianity. A lot of people have experiences that don't have that doesn't have that element, and
Right.
and and I don't mean to yeah, I don't mean to say that you have to believe the things that I believe, or,
Hmm.
or whatever. I
Sure.
think that there, you know, the one of the things that I say to people, especially when talking about Christianity,
Hmm.
is, read the Gospels. Like, never once does Jesus say worship me. He doesn't say it. He says follow me, right? And to some of these people, he's speaking in like literal terms, like, hey, going I'm
Come
going
on.
this way, come
Yeah.
with me. But also, like, I think when he's speaking to all of us there, he's pointing us to walk in the footsteps of the life that he lived. He's teaching us about cultivation, and he's saying, do as I have done.
Hmm.
Find what I have found. Like, the the and jumping back and forth here as I do, like the magic of the salvation powers of Jesus are such that, like, you can be in a hell realm after dying and call out, and he'll just show up, and there is this transformation that can occur where he can just, like a vacuum cleaner, he can just suck all of the pain and all of the suffering and all of that stuff just out of you, and you just like feel like washed clean.
Hmm.
He has the capacity to transmute, you know, for you, but at the same time, like, he sends people back. He says, no, you've got to go back. You've got to keep living your human life. You've got to keep doing it yourself. You have to. Yeah, I'll give you a power up. I'll give you a health pack. But and because, like, salvation, like when the Romans greeted each other, they said salve. That was like their hello. And
Hmm.
what does salve mean? It means to your health. Here's to your health. I hope you're healthy, right? So what is Jesus's role as the Salvador Mundi, right? He is the health pack for the world. Like, he's here to help. He's here to heal. But at the same time, like, we've got to live our own lives. We've got to do our own growing. We've got to tend our own fields.
Hmm.
We've got to follow that pattern. And so the thing is, ultimately, I think that, whether you're coming at it from a Buddhist perspective, or whether you're coming at it from a Hindu perspective, whether you're coming at it from an Islamic perspective, whether you're coming at it from a Jewish perspective, or a Christian perspective, or a Native American perspective, or any of the other, many, 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 many different, cultures and traditions out there in the world, it comes down to like being a person who understands that their actions have consequences, and it's better to do good and better to be kind and better to help others and better to live a high quality life that has value and meaning and enriches your friends and your family and the world around you. And if you have faith in living that kind of life, if you're inhabiting that kind of spirit, whether you've never heard the name of Christ or not, like you're already you're walking on the same road with him.
I do like that. I like that. Something I want to bring up that I know we've talked about and that we disagree on is reincarnation.
Okay.
And how I'm going to link that to what we just talked about is one of the difficulties I have with that is like, wouldn't Jesus have, like, because he's still showing up according to some people and their experiences and whatever. Wouldn't he have had to reincarnate, or was he like in his last incarnation? Is he good now? Is he kind of like, is it like similar to the Buddha where it's like, okay, at a certain level you're the top dog, there's nothing really for you to do anymore, so now maybe you can still help other beings, or let me go back to reincarnation without Jesus. Or let me just ask you: do you believe in reincarnation? Do you believe?
I believe that it's possible. I think it's possible.
Do you believe it's probable?
I think it's even probable. Wow, I don't know. I don't.
Not in terms of like numbers, but assigning numbers to things is just random. It doesn't make sense anymore.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that there seems, given the stories that I've heard, whether it's near-death experiences, people talking about having been shown like their experience of like lives that they've lived in the past, or how they chose the life that they're currently living, or there's a professor from the University of Virginia who interviewed a bunch of different children who remembered things from places that they lived. Like there seems to be a at least a small preponderance of evidence that some people have memories that there's no explanation of how they have those memories, if it wasn't for the fact that there is some thread of being that passes from one lifetime into another. As such, I think that's cool, and I want to believe in that possibility. I want to believe in the possibility that you can make incremental progress in this life that may help in the next life, or that there are continuing chances. It's not a belief upon which my framework of reality is contingent, because again, the framework of reality here is like, do your best to be a good, loving, kind person, and do your best to really just like be present, and like love God with all your body, heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself, and beyond that, like let the chips fall as they may. Like whether reincarnation is or isn't true or real, maybe it's not such a big deal. I'd like to believe it. I've read enough stories that make me believe it. And I think that, like, going back to the whole thing about like, well, if Jesus died, why hasn't Jesus come back?
Right.
Well, like I mentioned, like in the Acts of the Apostles, he's showing up through some guy just like walking down the street. He's, like, I think that there are times where he may like pop up as like a cameo that you don't even know, but he has the ability to like try to find that guy's birth certificate. Is that guy a real guy, or is it just like a body that just like manifested just like for the purposes of this interaction? I don't know, like mysterious things are mysterious. And then also, like if you read, whether it's the Christian accounts or the Muslim accounts of like the end times, like maybe he's coming back. I don't know. I don't know.
I almost said I hope not, but I take it back if he's.
No. If the real end times are coming, you want him to come back, because him coming back is not the worst of what's going to happen. But anyway, yeah. So I don't know. I think that reincarnation is a possibility. I think that it's an interesting story. I'm not a person, just like with the near-death experience, I'm not a person who has had any memories of having lived past lives. Not that I haven't tried, but I don't. But yeah, I don't know. I believe it because I think it's neat. I think that there's evidence that indicates it, but I also don't think that it's essential. I don't think it's important to believe in it, but I think it's possible.
I mean, I think it's possible. But you also said you hope it's true, and that's where I'm like, dude, I hope it's not, because well, it also depends of like, I guess karma would also be real if reincarnation was real, or maybe karma maybe has a higher probability with me than reincarnation, but they're kind of also linked. But the way
I've mentioned karma multiple times so far, and you didn't have any objections to it.
I don't have an objection to karma,
because karma is just like your actions have consequences.
Yeah, I like that.
That's all karma is.
I like that, but the thing with reincarnation is like, it seems like what I do now, if it has an impact on a future life,
yeah,
it's still unfair, like, because okay, maybe unfair is a wrong word, but his eyebrows went up. It's just the thought, honestly, of like, it's just such a hassle, bro. If I'm gonna get born again, I have to learn everything again.
Like,
I have
you gotta learn how to use the toilet and
I'll
everything.
be depressed again for the first time. I'll have my heart broken again for the first time, and then for the second time, and then go through the whole human experience again.
Yeah.
So that's one thing, just about preference. But then also, it just doesn't really make sense to me for also a bunch of reasons, because for a bunch of lame reasons, like the world population keeps increasing. How does that work with like the souls? Like, you know,
I've looked. Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, we're I think let's put like like let's try to wrap in the next like 9 minutes or so.
Let's do it.
Just because I've got to like have a meal and get ready for work and stuff like that. But I think that are you familiar with the Wheel of Time? This science fiction, like the fantasy novels, and they've got the show on Amazon now and stuff.
I'm aware of it, but just very vaguely.
Okay. Well, so and it's kind of like a Western fantasy encapsulation of this Buddhist concept of samsara is this wheel of time, and like whether you're reading the Bhagavad Gita or you're talking to the Buddha or whatever, there is this argument of like, dude, isn't it exhausting? You keep like getting slapped, screaming, having to learn how to stop shitting yourself, getting your heart broken, getting attacked by people, learning lessons, blah blah blah. You keep doing it over and over and over again. It's exhausting. You stop this chain, stop this crazy thing, right? Like, and then the Buddha teaches like, well, if you live a perfect life, that's the way out. If you flip these switches of attachment in such a way that you just like are able to let everything that happens to you just happen through you. If you're able to be completely non-resistant to the point where they may string you up and cut you to pieces, and you don't hold on to it. Like then there may come this point where, yeah, like your work here is done. You can graduate from this classroom, but first you have to take the test.
I want to drop out.
And you have to. Well, yeah, but that's senioritis. That's fatigue. That's normal. It's like that's part of the growing process. Like you look at the tree, right? Like the tree doesn't. I mean, granted, there are evergreens, whatever, but like there are cycles. There are cycles of growth. There are cycles of leaves falling. There's the winter time where the tree is just standing barren. Yeah, like it's okay to spend some time growing and showing, and it's okay to spend some time just like falling off and reflecting and recollecting and yeah, I think that like this whole thing of bodhisattvas, right? Like we like ultimately, right? Like what is this enlightenment? This enlightenment is like recognizing that like, oh, it was always already going perfectly to plan. Everything was fine. I just couldn't accept that. I had to keep messing with it, and when you learn how to like surrender, when you learn how to like let go, when you learn how to like just be with it without trying to be on it or whatever, then maybe you're done, or maybe you get to the point where it's like, all right, you go back to the start menu or whatever, and now a little new menu has popped up, and it's like, here's a new adventure. It's called suffering for the sake of others. And then you come back and you do it again, and maybe you're going to teach somebody something. Maybe you're going to teach it by telling them. Maybe you're going to teach it by showing them. Maybe you'll just like be with them and just help them just like lighten up a little bit, like you're just gonna bring some water to the root of this tree just because like, oh, I had this water bottle and I needed to empty it. And I wasn't going out of my way to help the tree, but it did help the tree. I don't know. There's so many possibilities. There's so many options. And then if you want to get all big with it, there is the opportunity to if you really continually grow and develop, or if you're just born into it, you get to be the son of God. And then you've got your Jesuses, and you've got your Buddhas, and you've got your Krishnas, and you've got your there's all sorts of gurus and great sages and teachers throughout the ages whose names I've probably forgotten or never knew.
Hey, either way, whether we're the son of God or not, we're his kids, I guess.
Well, exactly, and that's the thing. We are, right? We are all sons and daughters of God, because again, with the atoms spinning and the manifestation of being, like we're, tag, you're it.
Yeah, we all got the divine source in us.
Yeah.
What better note to end on? It's as optimistic as we're gonna get, I think.
There's actually I just here in the past couple of weeks, there was a near-death experience that I was listening to, and talking about your hope that there is no reincarnation, that you don't have to do this all again because life is hard, and who wants all that suffering?
Exactly.
There was this person who had an NDE, and they were talking to Jesus, and Jesus gave them an important lesson. And he said, suffer joyfully. So, Sam, I hope that you and I can both learn how to suffer just a little bit more joyfully.
Wow, Luke, do you want people to find you anywhere, somewhere? If so, with people, look, there's not going to be a lot.
Sure. If anybody listens this far into this conversation and wants to talk to me about something that I haven't already said, feel free to find me. I'm sure Sam is going to throw a tag in the show notes or something like that. I'm a responsible party on Twitter without an E. Also, Twitter doesn't exist anymore. It's x.com.
It's
We
Twitter.
live in the hell realm where Elon is Hitler. Yeah, or you can email me if you can find my email address, or call me if you can find my phone number. I don't know. Yeah, reach out if you want to reach out. I don't have anything to sell, at least not yet.
Not yet.
I'm a pretty good massage therapist, so if you find yourself in Northwest New Mexico, feel free to stop by and we can hook something up.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Sam.
Thank you, Luke. Have a good day, okay?
Yeah, absolutely. You too.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.